Welcome back to Askewed Reviews, and since today is Star Wars Day, we are doing a Star Wars double feature, and we're starting off with the 1984 adventure, fantasy, sci-fi family movie, The Caravan of Courage and Ewok Adventure. Here is your trivia question for today. In the Star Wars universe, what is the name of the common language that Sindel and Mace teach the Ewoks to speak? The answer will be at the end of this video. This is in fact a Star Wars film, however, at this point it has been stated it is no longer part of the main continuity. This movie takes place on Endor, where a star cruiser has crash landed there and has stranded a family known as the Taiwanese. The parents, Jeremit and Katerin, are separated from their children when all of a sudden a giant creature known as the Gorax shows up and kidnaps the both of them. This leaves Mace and Sindel alone and having to watch over each other. They manage to befriend a family of Ewoks who are willing to help them find their parents. The Ewoks take the two children to see their village mystic, Logray, to see if he can find the parents. Using some sort of spinning top, he's able to scry on the parents and find out where they are. They then also gain some additional assistance from two other Ewoks, Chukatrok and Kank. Now, as a full band of adventurers, the children and the Ewoks travel off to go find their parents and hopefully save them from the Gorax. This film, which was originally titled the Ewok Holiday Special, luckily did a lot better than the Star Wars Holiday Special and was actually a very good movie. It has been stated that if this movie is in fact canon, that it would take place somewhere between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. I feel that's a little iffy though, because when they meet Wicket in Return of the Jedi, he can't actually speak to Leia, although he learns English essentially in this movie. Joe Johnston is the production designer for this movie, but he's also the one who designed what Ewoks would look like in the Star Wars universe. In fact, he even wrote a children's book and illustrated it, and it's called The Adventures of Teebo. Wicket, who appeared in Return of the Jedi, is once again played by Warwick Davies. In fact, this is something you may not have noticed, but the same music that plays when Wicket meets Princess Leia is the same music that plays when Wicket meets Sindel. Speaking of Sindel, this is actually Aubrey Miller's first performance in a feature film, and other than the sequel, she really hasn't done much else though. Now, this has never been confirmed, but it is a rumor that apparently the character of Sindel was almost played by Drew Barrymore. Eric Walker, who plays Mace, was actually hired due to the fact that he had a resemblance to Mark Hamill, and they were hoping that that would intrigue people into wanting to watch this movie. Robert Englund, who had become very famously known as the actor who plays Freddy Krueger, actually auditioned for the role of Jeremit. Burl Ives was brought in to do the narration for the film. They wanted it to sound a little bit like a wildlife documentary, and I absolutely love the way he does the narration for this movie. And if you don't know who he is, he actually voiced the snowman in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. The vast majority of this movie was filmed in a redwood preserve called Roy's Redwoods, which is actually in Marin County, and Marin County is also where Skywalker Ranch is. Something that appears in this film that wasn't originally in Return of the Jedi is the fact that the Ewoks actually have eyelids so that they can close their eyes and blink. If you notice in some of the newer versions of Return of the Jedi, they've actually digitally added in eyelids. The language that the Ewoks are speaking is actually based off of a Tibetan dialect. Many years after the film was out, a book was released called The Wildlife of Star Wars: A Field Guide, and in it, it actually gives us the name of two of the creatures that only appear in this film. The first one being the Boar Wolf, and the other one being the Temptor. Two projects were created due to the success of this film: an Ewoks cartoon series and a sequel called Ewoks: The Battle for Endor. But we'll go over that movie in the next video. The Gorax actually does make another appearance in another Star Wars project. You can see a head of one stuffed and mounted as an Easter egg in Star Wars: The Force Unleashed, the video game. There are so many moments from this movie that I can remember from even when I watched this movie as a child. I'll never forget Mace being stuck under the water, the little creatures called Wisties that flew around, and they were these little firefly fairy creatures, and of course, the absolute nightmare fuel that are these giant spider-like creatures. In my opinion, this film was right up there with other 80s fantasy adventure movies like Willow and The Dark Crystal. This movie did an amazing job of feeling like a true adventure, like something you would find in a Dungeons and Dragons tabletop game. So I'm going to give this film a 4 out of 5. Now, as for the trivia question from the beginning of this episode, in the Star Wars universe, what is the name of the common language that Sindel and Mace teach the Ewoks to speak? It's actually called Galactic Basic. If you've ever heard people speak what sounds like English in any of the movies or TV series, that's what it's called. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Askewed Reviews. If there is a movie you'd like to see get a review, just mention it in the comments. And as always, like, comment, share, and subscribe.